Hey Deckers, Liam here, I'm back for another video. Did you know that this week has marked 5 years of Proton being available? It's hard to believe, but it's been out for that long, and without it, there is no way Valve would have released the Steam Deck. So this is just a bit of a celebratory reflection video featuring the newer release of yet another Zombie Survivors. It's a pretty cool sort of vampire survivor-like game with zombies that I've been playing quite a bit of recently. Now back to Proton. On August 21st of 2018, Valve announced a new version of Steam Play. Now, to give you a bit of history here, originally Steam Play simply meant you could buy a game once on Steam and get access to all versions of it, all platforms. So if you purchased a game on Windows, you could play it on Linux. If it had a native Linux version, same again for macOS. You would see a Steam Play badge on the Steam store pages, and nearly everything supported Steam Play, apart from a couple titles that had separate purchases for Mac and Linux from external game porters. You see, the problem with the original Steam machines is that without getting into the hardware side, there just weren't enough native Linux ports of games, and some major games that were announced to be ported for Steam machines never actually happened. Now, when I say native Linux, what I mean is that games that have a version built for Linux directly, just like you would have a Windows version, a Mac version, an Xbox version, and you get the idea, right? Valve needed something more because developers largely just didn't really care, and who could blame them? Linux was and still is a niche. It's a small platform even with the Steam Deck nowadays. You cannot have a gaming platform without the most popular games people actually want to play. Thankfully then, the Steam machines burning up gave Valve a good kick up the arse to go back to the drawing board and figure it out, and Proton was their answer. Now, I remember this very vividly being sat in my office at the time. I was going over a to-do list of various articles of Linux games I was going to be writing about, which was mostly at the time smaller indies, just planning the week ahead and getting ready to go to bed. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, this announcement comes along from Valve, and it basically said to the effect of, "You're going to be really busy, you better go get a coffee." Valve had partnered up with a company called Codeweavers. This is the company that sponsored development on the compatibility tool called Wine. They've been doing this behind the scenes since 2016. They had been working together and funding further Wine development on various enhancements, performance improvements, and supporting the development of DXVK, which is what translates Microsoft's Direct 3D into Vulkan so that it can work and perform well on Linux-based platforms. Without the many years of work on Wine, this wouldn't have been possible, of course, so everyone who contributed to Wine over the years deserves a firm high five. We're all enjoying the fruits of your labour here. However, it's how Valve put everything together in a neat little package, funded all the extras like graphics driver work, Linux kernel work, and they fund quite a lot more that I'm not going to go into, just to get Proton in front of millions of gamers, and it just really moved everything along. Proton was nothing like it is now when it initially released. There was only a few select Valve-approved titles that you could actually play with it. However, they did very quickly then expand that to basically where we are now, where you can run anything that you want. Over time, they constantly improved Proton, and we didn't really know why they were doing this. You have to think, back when Proton actually released initially, Steam machines had already been and gone, Linux gaming was basically going nowhere. We didn't know what they were doing, like what was their end goal. But of course, then the Steam Deck was announced in July 2021, and then it all makes sense. And when you think back to Steam itself, that only actually released on Linux in February of 2013. Then you had the Steam Machine announcements in September 2013. They have come such a long way. Now, I've lost count of the amount of games that I've been thankful to be able to play on my Linux desktop and my Steam Deck thanks to Proton. Now, there are a few people who do continue to moan at the lack of native Linux support, and I did a video talk on this previously, but really, the majority of gamers simply do not care. What a game uses, They just want to hit play and see that it works and it's supported. That's what really matters. Proton gives us this almost magical ability to not worry about configuration files, installing Wine and all that fussing around. You can largely just hit the play button in Steam on your desktop or your Steam Deck, and a lot of games just work. Proton just continues to amaze me, as does Valve's really good support of it. There's over 300 updates to the Proton changelog, although some of course are just like text corrections, but it still gives you an idea of just how many updates Valve puts out to improve Linux and Steam Deck gaming with Proton. They're constantly putting out updates for big new releases, like remember the time where Elden Ring released and Valve were burning the midnight oil for the optimizations there. Same again for Dead Space. They're repeatedly fixing issues because of the EA app and the Ubisoft launcher, and the list just goes on and on. They have people doing some serious hacker magic to make all this happen. When you look at the crowdsourced reports on the Proton database website, there's over 11,000 titles that are reported to work by multiple people. But that does cover both desktop Linux and Steam Deck. And it's only a small fraction of Steam's overall game count, of course, but Proton database does rely on people actually manually going to it and writing a report. Valve's own Deck Verified rating system just for the Steam Deck hit plenty of milestones since the Steam Deck's release, now having over 10,000 titles rated to be playable or verified. And in fact, looking at verified and playable together, it's almost hitting 11,000 as well. And checking today, just fully verified titles alone are hitting 3,743. That's a lot of games that you should just be able to hit play and have no problems with. Proton Database and Deck Verified do include a mixture of native Linux releases that I mentioned earlier and Windows games running through Proton though. But the point is, being on Linux now for a gamer means quite often a huge amount of games do actually just work. It's insane when you look at the progress Linux has made as a platform for gaming over the years, and so much of it is really down to Valve just not giving up and doing whatever they want to do because they can. So here's to Proton, making Windows games work on Linux desktop and Steam Deck. Happy 5 years. Cheers Valve. Be sure to let me know what you have been playing lately in the comments, and I'll see you later.